Am I wrong for kicking my brother out for announcing his wife's pregnancy right after I announced my daughter had cancer? Just to make sure I represent both sides of the conflict, my brother and his wife suffered from not having kids for years. It impacted them greatly. They love the kids in the family but always wish to have kids of their own. Lately, we got busy with my daughter Megan, who is 12, with health problems. She started suffering from anemia, loss of appetite, and recurrent fevers. We've taken her to the pediatrician, and from there we've learned that she has cancer. It was so devastating, I didn't want to tell my family right away. Most of them have chronic conditions, and this type of news might trigger a negative reaction because they love Megan and would give everything to see her healthy. My husband and I decided to gather the family at my house this past Wednesday to announce Megan's diagnosis. My aunt didn't take it well because she holds Megan dear, so she was rightfully the most devastated one. After a few minutes of complete silence, my brother started moving in his seat, saying there's something very serious he wanted to tell everyone. He was hesitant, but then he and his wife stood up, and then he said that they found out that they were finally expecting. The family were conflicted. Some got up to congratulate them, and some remained seated. I remained seated, and my brother then approached me and expressed how sorry he was that they had to tell us in these circumstances, but said he couldn't wait since this is a huge deal for them after years of waiting and because everyone was present. Literally everyone was there since I said the announcement we wanted to make concerned Megan. I argued with him about how he thought this was an appropriate time and asked if Megan mattered to him at all since he didn't take a minute to realize he was just diagnosed with cancer. He started reminding me how many years he and his wife suffered from frustration and disappointment for not being able to have kids, and argued that because he wasn't able to be a father until now, he's 37, he felt he was missing out on so much for many years, and that I didn't have to finally tell him congratulations, but should at least not guilt him for feeling overwhelmed and excited to finally be a father. He said I knew exactly how much he adores Megan and I shouldn't even think otherwise. Then said he was just sharing good news after hearing the bad news and there was nothing wrong with that. I told him and his wife to leave the house right then. He said he won't argue anymore because of how tense I felt, but will expect me to apologize at some point. Some family agreed with me, but my parents thought I shouldn't have taken my anger out on him like that, and that he'll always remember my reaction to the news he gave and should apologize after I've calmed down. So, was I wrong for my reaction? Am I wrong for not lying about why I could not remove my headscarf? I, 24 female, am a bridesmaid for one of my closest friends, Jackie, 24. I've been so excited to help. I was in charge of the bridal shower, the games, decorations, and menu. I left the guest list to Jackie's sister. Due to religious reasons, I wear a headscarf. I love and am very proud of it. In the group chat with other bridesmaids, I was talking about how excited I am to attend a girls-only event. I recently dyed my hair and wanted to show it off. I even paid extra to ask for a girls-only staff that day. Day of, as guests arrive, I realize one of them is Tori, 26 female. I know Tori as a family friend of Jackie's, but the few times I met her, it was before her transition to female. I was aware of it, but unaware she was coming to the shower. I don't mind at all, of course, and she's a lovely person, but I decided to keep my scarf on. As everyone's eating later, I'm passing by the tables to make sure everyone's good, and one of my bridesmaids mentioned that they hadn't gotten to see my hair and they wanted to see it. I tried to dismiss it at first or say, oh, I'll show you later, but the other girls at the table got curious. I got uncomfortable and I just said, oh, I'm actually not really comfortable taking it off right now. When pressed as to why, I said there's guests I don't feel comfortable taking it off in front of. There was a collective, oh, and I thought, cool, that's over. But one girl got aggressive and asked if I was referring to Tori. She's loud and the other tables turn to look. I don't answer. The girl asks if I wear one around men, so I say yes. She then says there's no men here, so clearly you should take it off. I tell her again that I'm keeping it on. Another bridesmaid defends me and tells the girl to chill out. Tori comes over and says me not taking it off is a slap in the face to her identity. I'm just shocked and had no clue what to do. Eventually, Tori and a few girls left saying that they felt it was disrespectful. I feel awful that this ruined a beautiful day for my friend. It's causing more trouble with people threatening to leave the wedding over discrimination towards me or towards Tori. I don't think I was in the wrong. Just as Tori can be Tori, I can be me. I feel like it'd be the equivalent of me making Tori or someone else adjust for me. I feel like we should just accept and respect each other rather than be woke one-sided. My question is more about being honest as to why I couldn't. Jackie is on my side, but Jackie's sister is giving her hell for it, saying she purposely left out that detail in the guest list to test me. Jackie says I should have brushed it off and said I was having a bad hair day or avoid giving an answer. I didn't ever mention Tori's name in my answer, and I don't think my answer was rude, but seeing how much stress it's causing, I'm thinking I should have made up a lie. So, am I wrong for how I handled the situation?
Just a trigger warning on this next story, you guys. It does feature talks and discussions about losing a child and child death. Mother-in-law's neglect killed my child. Now she thinks I'll let her around my second child. My mother-in-law was guilty in the death of her grandchild, my daughter. She was 2 years old at the time, and my husband and me let my mother-in-law babysit her while we were busy with job-related things. It was summertime, and they were staying at mother-in-law's house that has a pond next to it. My daughter loved water. Bath time was her favorite time of the day. They were playing at the edge of the pond, and then mother-in-law remembered she had to take clothes out of the dryer, and she left a 2-year-old alone next to the large body of water. My daughter's childlike curiosity plus her love for water resulted in her getting into the deep part of the pond and drowning. All because mother-in-law considered clothes in the dryer an important enough reason to leave a toddler unsupervised. Then she realized what has happened. She started to panic and call for help. Her neighbor heard her. They got into the pond and called an ambulance, but it was too late. Imagine what it's like for a parent to come to the person you trusted your child with and they tell you your child is dead. And mother-in-law was begging us not to involve the police into this. She kept repeating it was an accident and she, quote, doesn't know how it could have happened, was only gone for a moment, feels even worse than we do. Calling the police won't bring her back.
Gaslighting.
We did call the police, of course, and she was charged with criminal negligence and sentenced to 3 years in prison, which, in my opinion, was too light of a punishment. Now, recently, mother-in-law was released from prison, and my husband was the first person she looked for contact with. I couldn't bring myself to have any more children for a long time, but eventually I got pregnant again, and last summer we welcomed our son. Obviously, we weren't going to tell mother-in-law we're parents again, but she saw us walking with a baby stroller and realized that once more she has a grandchild. Then she was like, but I saw you have a new baby. I'm so glad I have a grandchild again. And then she went on about, is it a boy or a girl? When will she be able to see them and meet them? Because she wants to take care of them so much. My husband told her immediately that she doesn't have anything. This is our child, ours only. Our son doesn't have a grandmother, and he will never ever in a million years be anywhere around her. So my husband told her firmly that she'll have no access to the baby, and he doesn't want to talk to her either. Mother-in-law wasn't having it. That evening she came to our house asking to see her grandchild again. We didn't let her come in, obviously. And mother-in-law got mad, claiming that as a grandmother, she has rights to meet her grandchild. We told her that she lost all her rights to our children when she let our daughter drown. Mother-in-law told us she'll go to court and she'll demand legal permission to meet the baby.
Alexis.
This story time is about the last time I saw my mother. This is sad, so go ahead and get your Kleenexes now. I was an only child and my mom was a single parent and we lived in Georgia. She got this new job as a bank teller at this bank by our house. She was excited when she got the call and they confirmed that she got the job. Her plan was to work there long enough to eventually become a manager. After she got confirmation that she would be working there, we celebrated. So boom, first day comes around and she sits me on the couch and she tells me about life. She was just going on and on about how you can do and be whatever you want to be. It doesn't matter if you're a felon. It doesn't matter if you're smart. If you think you're not, it doesn't matter. She says, I don't care if it's just me and you until the end of the world. We're going to be okay. In my head, I was like, blah, blah, blah. I was 11 at this time, just so you know. So yeah, she goes to work and I go to school. So after my fourth period, I heard the bell in my class. Ding! And they called me to the office. I asked why I was in the office and everyone looked scared to tell me. They told me that there was a robbery at my mom's bank. Unfortunately, most people were... Including my mom. I wish I cherished her more.
Am I the asshole that I didn't go to my sister's actual engagement because my husband and I already had plans? My husband loves his high school reunion. He never missed one, and when the last one came up, we bought a $100 ticket. My sister's boyfriend called me 10 days beforehand, saying he was going to ask her to marry him, and that he wanted to propose at this expensive beach resort 3 hours away. He wanted to do the asking and have us, my parents, and some friends meet them for dinner afterward. Politely told him we already put out our money for an event and wouldn't be able to come. Adding to my decision, at the time, my self-employed husband's business wasn't making much money. We couldn't afford to skip out on a $100 ticket and pay for a $300 hotel room, an expensive meal. My sister is livid that we couldn't come and told me later that we should have driven 3 hours there and 3 hours home in the same night if we couldn't afford the hotel. Also, they certainly did end up getting married and we obviously were there for all of that. They also had an actual engagement party later that we were at. How many parties does someone need? So I'm just wondering, am I the asshole for not going to my sister's actual engagement because I already had plans that night?
This is the story of the time my client got completely drunk on set of a photo shoot. This story takes place back when I used to do boudoir shoots. I would meet the clients and the photographer in a hotel. I would set up my entire makeup station in one room and they would be taking photos in the room next to us. For a lot of women, these types of photo shoots are just a little bit out of their comfort zone. And there were several clients who would choose to have just a little bit of liquid courage before stepping into the photo shoot room. For the sake of the story, let's just call this girl Mandy. As soon as Mandy arrived on set to get her makeup done, she had already told me that she was extremely nervous about this photo shoot. Mandy told me she was nervous for a couple of reasons, all of which I had heard before, so I started preparing her and doing the best I could to make her feel comfortable in the makeup room. Shortly after I started on her makeup, she asked me if there was any way she would be able to have some of the wine that was on the counter. I said, yep, absolutely, that stuff is there for you guys. She headed over and made herself a glass of wine, and then sat back down in my chair while I continued to do her makeup. Whenever I work on photo shoots like this, I usually give myself an hour to finish each client's makeup. Since they will also have an appointment time with the photographer, it's extremely important that I get my clients done on time. Because of the slight time crunch, I was so focused on making sure I finished her makeup on time that I hadn't even paid attention at all to how many times she had filled up her wine cup. The last step in me finishing Mandy's makeup was doing her eyeliner and applying false lashes. As you know, this requires her to be pretty still, and even though I usually place my hand on top of their head to stabilize it, for some reason I just couldn't get her head to stay still. Let me remind you that I had already done her eyeshadow and the entire rest of her makeup, so I was really confused why all of a sudden she started acting totally different. I didn't want to risk ruining her makeup by messing up her eyeliner, so I asked her if she could just be a little more still and make sure she was holding her head up so I didn't have to support her entire weight. When she looked up at me, that's when I realized that she was totally wasted. She started slurring her words, telling me all sorts of TMI stories, one of which included her having to go to the ER to get a tampon removed when she was like 14. And when I finished her makeup, she legitimately fell out of my chair onto the hotel floor. I went and got the photographer from the other room and told her about Mandy's situation. Both of us advised Mandy not to do her shoot that day, and we even offered to reschedule. But Mandy kept insisting that she got those pictures done because her wedding was just around the corner and she wanted to give them to her husband on her honeymoon. I went down to the lobby and asked if they had any crackers, bread, rolls, something. I took Mandy back up a small snack, and as she was eating it, she literally just vomited all over the entire floor. Eventually, she made it to the bathroom and she threw up in there. And all of this was happening while I had another client on the way. Long story short, I guess don't drink alcohol before your photo shoot.
The TV show Black Mirror is genuinely one of the scariest shows that I've ever seen. But what if some of its storylines actually started to come true? Since the episode Nosedive, where you basically leave people Google reviews, we've seen the potential introduction of social credit over in China. And we don't quite have drones the size of bees yet, but people at Harvard are currently trying to make them. And for contacts with cameras, Samsung actually ended up getting a patent for smart contacts. But one of the most prevalent storylines that's actually trending today is the episode with Miley Cyrus in it. In this episode, she plays a singer named Ashley O, and she's famous for her sound, her look, her originality, and even though she seems happy on the inside, she's very miserable. She's being given medication illegally to stabilize her mood, and it gets to the point where her management has so much control that it really isn't even her anymore. And I remember watching this and thinking how sad this would be, and would we even know if a celebrity was going through this? And then we had the introduction of the Free Britney movement. And so many of Britney's fans were able to identify that she was in trouble before she announced to the public. So how did we even get to knowing that Britney was in trouble? Well, a few fans here and there had talked about it briefly, whether it was a celebrity or a fan. The first time it was really mentioned was 2017 on a podcast called Britney's Gram. It was there to dissect Britney Spears' Instagram account, which there was a lot of weird things on. For example, she was putting a lot of timestamps on her Instagram photos, almost as if she was leaving some sort of a paper trail. And a lot of her photos were representative of her being locked up in a metaphorical sense. Like this photo right here says, "I put myself in a timeout until I can play nice with others. This may take a while," and the caption says, "A while? How about a decade?" Well, in 2020, there was a video of her that went viral on TikTok of her supporting LGBTQIA+. People were a little concerned about how she was behaving, and they told her if she needed help to wear yellow in her next video. And guess what? She wore yellow, so people commented to wear blue in her next video. And she responded by wearing blue. So everyone started to wonder about her conservatorship. Who was controlling her? Why did she need help? And why does her paperwork say she has dementia? So how can someone complete 4 world tours, record 4 albums, while also performing and selling out an entire Las Vegas show, while her paperwork says she has dementia? In 2008, Britney was placed under a temporary conservatorship at the age of 26. She had her famous breakdown that became household news overnight on January 4th of 2008. She had really hit rock bottom and was going through her custody dispute with Kevin Federline, and then was locked up again around January 31st. And this particular psych hospital that she was taken to had less than the best reviews. And this is when her conservatorship became permanent, due to her being unfit to take care of herself. Yet 2 months in, she ended up showing up for a role on How I Met Your Mother, and then wiped the floors at the VMAs, winning all the awards. In 2009, she had her circus tour, and a voicemail between her and her lawyer was leaked, saying that she desperately wanted to get out of this conservatorship, but that her father was threatening her. She did her Femme Fatale tour next, and then in 2012, she was an X Factor judge. Yet she was still deemed too unfit to take care of herself. Part 4 to Free Britney. So Britney had even tried to bring up her conservatorship on the Jonathan Ross show, but that part was cut. And in 2016, people noticed that she posted a photo with Hillary using the hashtag I'm with her, but then had to remove it, which turned out later because she couldn't vote. And after that, she was supposed to perform for her new Domination show, but then announced that she couldn't go due to her father's health issues, which it later turned out that her father, Jamie, had actually canceled the show because she wasn't taking her new medication. So once he pulled it, he told her to just blame it on his health issues. And his own grandson ended up coming on to Alive and talking about how awful he is. And in April of 2020, she was sent back to a mental health facility, which the anonymous paralegal who gave information to the podcast said that she had been forced there between mid-January all the way up to April. And then Kevin Federline ended up charging Jamie Spears for allegedly abusing one of their kids. And because he's Britney's conservator, she ended up only having 30% visitation with her kids because he basically owns her. And after the documentary came out, she said she was embarrassed, but was that really Britney? Part 5 to Free Britney. Well, as we've stated, she's had very weird stuff on her Instagram, but it seems as though midway through the content changed, and someone by the name of Cassie Petrie, who's her social media manager, has been posting for her. At least we know some of the time, maybe not all the time. And then on June 23rd, as we all heard, Britney broke her silence. She came out and shared everything that she's been through under her conservatorship to the courts. 13 years of her rights have been fully taken away. She can't have a baby, she can't get married, she can't take out her IUD. She's forced to work even when sick, can't even change her own kitchen cabinets. And whenever she actually tried to set up boundaries, she was put on lithium. Which I didn't know much about this drug, but this is what the holistic psychologist on Instagram said about it. Basically, no one is actually looking out for her mental health, and everyone is banking on her payroll. From her parents to her sister to everyone in her circle. And if you want to hear more about her sister, Jamie Lynn Spears, go to my Instagram, go to my middle reels tab, and I'm going to be talking about all the stuff that she's gotten into, because there seems to be such a double standard in this family. Britney's father is an alcoholic and abusive, yet he's been deemed fit to take care of her. Last part to Free Britney. So since all of this has come out, there has been a huge public reaction and an overwhelming amount of support. Iggy Azalea even came out and said how she was a witness to this behavior, and she was even invited to testify before Congress. Christina Aguilera released this statement about her, and as we've been watching her Instagram again lately, we've seen that she's been on a trip, yet these photos have been used for her previously a year ago. So it's probably just Cassie running her account. Really, Britney just needs healing and support right now, and I'm sure there's going to be even more updates by the time I come out with this video. And this whole story really shows the importance of autonomy. There's other celebrities like Amanda Bynes who are also under conservatorships, and we really don't know how bad those are. The court system seemed to be just so messed up, so people talking about it and actually providing social pressure helps. So we'll continue to talk about it, and hopefully it'll save Britney.
Since these seem to be popular, here's some more ghost stories. So for context, my mother has had this little girl ghost that follows her around and has followed her since she was a young kid. And one of the ways that I could tell she was in the living room was there was this door that had been sealed off because my mother had put a cabinet in front of it on the other side. And then to make it look prettier, had hung a curtain across that door to kind of hide the fact that it had been blocked by a cabinet. And every now and again, when we were sitting in the living room, out of the corner of your eye, you could see the curtain breathing. And when I say breathing, I mean it would go out and back in, and out and back in, like lungs expanding, like somebody was standing behind the curtain and their chest was expanding because they were breathing and the curtain was moving with their chest. And there wasn't a vent or anything under this curtain because it was a doorway. And one time I was watching Black Butler Book of Atlantic in the living room, and there was kind of a scary-ish scene, for young kids anyways, I imagine, where there is like a sword fighting scene where Elizabeth, the little girl, fights off a bunch of zombies with swords. And so I had noticed the curtain was breathing, and I was like, hey, just so you know, like I paused the movie, I was like, hey, just so you know, there's about to be a really scary scene that comes up. You might not want to watch this. And the curtain breathed for about 2 more seconds and then stopped. She was like, oh, it's scary? Never mind, and fucking left. Another time, I was cooking and I could hear spices rattling in the spice cabinet. And I thought, oh, fuck, there's a mouse in there. Gross. So I opened the cabinet to see what was causing the rattling. And there was no mouse. And I was like, the ghosts wanted to play with the spices because there are a lot of little kids in that house. So I left the door open, and I was like, okay, I'll leave this open so you can play with the spices, but when you're done, you need to close the door because I'll forget. And I finished cooking, and I went and sat down and ate my food. And as I was eating, I heard the door slam shut. And the freaky part of that is they had slow close hinges, so whatever closed it had to close it hard to make it slam. And I was home alone and on the other side of the room, so I couldn't have caused it. Another time, when I was on vacation at my grandparents' house, my mother came upstairs because she had heard noises in our rooms and opened the door to my room and saw my fairly extensive collection of stuffed animals in a circle on the floor like they were having a tea party. My mom was like, that's freaky. Hey, Adrian probably won't like you playing with his stuffed animals. You need to put them back before he gets home. And the next time she went upstairs, they were back on their shelf. And I had, in fact, not left them in a circle. They always stay on their shelf. So...
Am I the asshole for not inviting my sister's kids to my wedding? My wedding will be in a few months, and my future wife and I want a small and intimate wedding. Love the kids in our extended family, but unfortunately some of them have trouble sitting down in one spot for a very long time. Because I have a fear of being interrupted by kids during our wedding vows, we decided to have no kids at the event. My oldest sibling and I were really close when we were kids. Unfortunately, life happened and we've grown apart over time due to my sibling being married and having a family. I called her to mention that I wouldn't be having any kids at the wedding because of my fear of being interrupted during my vows. I did offer to take her kids to Disney World for a day so I could treat them to something really special. She said that it was fucked up that I wouldn't be having kids at the wedding and insisted in them being there. Thinking about it and discussing it with my future spouse, I decided to send the invitations with a no child policy. 99% of the people had no problem with it. I had a chance to see her kids recently. I figured the Disney World probably wasn't brought up with them, so I gave them each $100. My sibling was one of the last to RSVP to my wedding and did not until my parents spoke to them. I really hope that she's behaving as this. Am I that hassle?
Story time about how I had to send my dogs on my neighbors. I had to send them on my neighbors, you know why? Because they tried me. So just so y'all know, I am, and so are my two daughters, and they are the opposite. So one day my daughters were playing outside minding their little black business, and our neighbors pull up. So the woman goes inside of the house, and the man stays outside staring at my children like they are some lost animals. So he goes, "What are you guys doing outside?" Mind you, I'm in the kitchen, but the window is raised so I can hear everything. So they answer him, "Oh, we're just playing it." Then he goes, "Man, you people really love being in the sun, don't you?" I had to pause my music and stop what I was doing to make sure he actually said that. My daughter then says, "I'm telling my mommy." This fool had the nerve to grab my child and tell her she ain't telling nobody nothing. This fool clearly didn't think I was listening. I walked out there with my ready to go K9. I said, "Let her go." He says, "Well, she tried to attack me." I'm like, "Something gonna attack you in a minute." He says, "If you can't control your daughter, then before you can finish, I'll let that dog go." Ironic how I let the dog on him. My teacher forced me to repeat a grade just because I passed my classes way too good to be true. I'm gonna explain this to y'all, and I'm gonna explain to you how I passed those classes so good. So my teacher couldn't stand me, right? She would salivate at the idea of me having to fail a class. And mind you, I was failing. But the end of the school year started to come around and I was still failing and I needed to get that grade up or I was screwed. So one day I was waiting after school outside looking like a sad lost puppy dog until my male teacher, Mr. Sams, came up to me. I told him I was failing my math class and I was going to be screwed and he told me he could help me out with it. I just knew I was going to get lucky. He locks the door and he shows me this app called Goth Math. Completely free, live tutorials, step by step. And they teach all math. When I tell you this app saved my life. Even though she wanted to, she couldn't fail me after that. My grades were way too good. I have to pass this knowledge on. If you are in school, check this app out. Link in bio.
Am I the asshole for putting our nanny on the family membership instead of my wife? I am a father of 2 kids. My wife and I, we both work. She works considerably more than I do, with less flexibility. She has a ton of responsibility at her job. Even if it's her time off, if shit goes down, she has to handle it. A few weeks ago, I took my kids to a local museum and they loved it, so I joined for a membership. The membership is good for 4 people, but you can add extras, but it costs way more. I did just the 4, but instead of adding my wife as the adult, I added our nanny. Because 9 times out of 10, it's either me or our nanny taking the kids somewhere, so it just made sense. My wife recently discovered it after looking on our account, because the kids and our nanny are going today, so she wanted to confirm that the membership was good. Hurt her feelings, and I suppose she chose to take it out on me with anger. I didn't like my answer for why I did and kept saying it says a lot. But I just put our nanny in the mom's lap instead of paying the extra $15 for her to be there too. So I'm just wondering, am I the asshole for doing so?
As much as it pains me to say this, before my daughter turned 17, I didn't feel any love for her. I didn't even like her, really. She certainly thought I did, but on the inside, I just couldn't feel anything but annoyance towards her. She was very manipulative and needed constant attention. I know that this is a common feeling in parents, but I feel so ashamed to actually say it out loud. 2 particularly traumatic instances for me were one, where I was going through an extremely tough time and she wasn't there for me. She never gave me support or comfort that I needed, and there is no worse feeling than being betrayed by family. She was a teenager and old enough to know better. And 2, there was a period when she was really pestering me to take her to a psychologist, and one time I caught her forcing forcing herself to throw up. I didn't know what to do and felt completely helpless. She's 18 now and lots better. She almost never complains about anything and is always there when I need a shoulder to cry on. My 2 older children were visiting last night and we were discussing family memories. And while we were joking, I mentioned in passing to her, "You really fucked me up good." She asked what I meant and I told her about the 2 incidents I mentioned before. She got quiet and eventually said, "You know, I really needed your help back then and you just wouldn't." I told her that I needed her help too, but she came back with, "I'm your daughter." I told her, "Yes, and I'm your mother. What's your point?" She ended up going home with her older sister and she won't return any of my calls. Her older sister called and told me that I had really hurt her last night and that I needed to apologize. I personally don't feel like I owe my daughter anything. She abused me her whole life. Am I the asshole for not understanding?
I've been sitting on this story time. I've been absolutely holding it back just because I was like, can the people handle it? Because I could barely handle it. I still talk about it in therapy. And my therapist labeled this whole situation as new trauma. I had a best friend. And me and her were like this. We're like this. I mean, like, so much so that people knew us as best friends. We didn't do anything without each other. I, at first, was really cool with this because it was so fun to, like, have somebody who wanted to hang out with you all the time. Duh. But then it got, like, a little codependent, not as fun, less enjoyable. I never even went on dates alone. I mean, my best friend, she was always there. If I was hanging out with my boyfriend, my best friend was there. If I got out of class, I needed to text my best friend, be like, "What's up? What are you doing?" And this was like fun when you're younger because you're like, oh, we're younger. It's fine. Who doesn't love hanging out with their girls 24/7? If my friends don't like my best friend and my boyfriend doesn't like them, then they can fuck off. And every single guy I did date while I was friends with her didn't really like her, not to her face or anything, but they would just be like, "Why can we not like spend the night together? Why will she not let us like spend the night in the room to be like intimate? You know, what is this? Why can't we just like hang out by ourselves, be alone? It's fine." And at the time I like always brushed it off. I was like, it's no big deal. Totally normal. She's just my best friend. We do everything together. But then I graduate. And my best friend was so distraught about me graduating that they were like, "I'll just drop out. I'll drop out of college and I'll move with you and I'll just get a job and we'll be perfect." I was so sad at the idea of me and my friend like not being best friends anymore that I was just like, oh my God, this is perfect. I was moving in with my best friend from high school and I was like, oh, another person to like split the rent 3 ways. This is a dream come true. It was the worst fucking time in my goddamn life. I don't know what happened after we left that college campus, but my best friend turned into a fucking psychopath. I think a lot of the issues probably stem from the fact that we were moving in with my best friend that I had been best friends with since I was like 13, and I think that kind of intimidated her. She was like super keen on making us like the 3 Musketeers now, and I was just like, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. So basically all of her behaviors and how much she leaned on me, was codependent on me, transferred over to my other longtime friend as well. And she did not take this as lightly. We're all 3 living together. And to make this easier, because I've been saying both best friend, the girl from college, let's call her Raylan. And the girl from high school, my best friend who had been the longer one that I was moving back in with, let's call her Jackie. So the more that Raylan was like around me and Jackie started to point out, she was like, "So I see you guys are super inseparable. You guys had such a fun time in college, but like, she's kind of like mean to you." And I was like, "What are you talking about, Jackie? Raylan's my best friend. That's why she moved in with us." What could you possibly what are you talking about? And Jackie pointed out to me, she was like, "Do you not notice that she like insults you and argues with you like all the time?" And I was like, "What?" "Oh, I mean, are you talking about when she talks about like what would I do if I was as skinny as her?" I think she's just being Raylan. And she tried to make me see it. She literally tried to, and she was being so sweet. She wasn't saying like, let's not be friends with her, X, Y, and Z. She was just like, you guys like fight a lot. Like, she's just always arguing with you and she's kind of mean to you. And I had pushed it off. And then basically we are living longer in the apartment. And things kind of start getting a little harder. By that, I mean, Raylan has given up the idea of paying rent. and me and Jackie were paying most of the rent. And having to do things to pay the rent that I wouldn't even tell my fucking therapist, okay? Things that scarred me, just so I could have money to not get evicted. And it was getting to a point where Raylan had owed me a lot of money. I'm not gonna fucking lie to you. Over $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, maybe even fucking $5,000. That is how much money, because every single time we did something, if Raylan didn't have the money, Raylan was completely okay with asking us to pay for her. And this wouldn't have been bad if it didn't breach into like just thousands of dollars end up being owed to us. And then on top of that, we're paying for the water, the electricity, the rent, the dog food. We're doing so much. And I think I was so used to Raylan owing me money that it didn't bother me as much. But once Raylan started owing Jackie money, Jackie rightfully got pissed. She had not known this girl for God knows how long, and now she's already like racking up a check with her. And then one time, oh my God, this Jerry Springer shit. We are in the fucking room. Jackie had came to me earlier and she's like, look, I'm having to work multiple jobs and like I have no savings. I've never been in such a financial stressful position until now. I think we need to talk to Raylan. Wouldn't really have to wait because Raylan was listening to us outside the door.
This is the story of the time I did makeup on a model, and she was one of the worst clients I ever had. Before I get into the story time, I just want to introduce y'all to my friend Hallie. I'm going to be doing makeup on her face today instead of mine, and we're going to be doing a purple e-girl inspired look. Okay, now let's get back to the story. This model was actually a close friend of mine a couple years ago, and she had reached out to me as a local makeup artist to have me do her makeup for a special event. The model in question here was one of those girls who didn't really wear any makeup unless it was for a photo shoot or a very special occasion. That being said, she was used to having her makeup done pretty often. She had modeled in multiple magazines and has since then appeared in multiple online and in-store ad campaigns for several big-name brands. When she arrived for her appointment, she had already explained to me that she wanted to look pretty but kind of like she wasn't wearing makeup at all. Believe it or not, doing a no makeup look was actually a pretty frequent request among my clients. Also, I want you to keep in mind that I had never done this girl's makeup before, and I just kind of assumed that she would be totally used to the entire process since she had gotten her makeup done so many times for photo shoots. A couple minutes before her appointment time, she had texted me to let me know that she would be just a couple minutes late. On this particular day, I had clients back to back to back, so I wasn't really upset about her being late. I was kind of excited to actually get to sit down and have a short break. Well, she ended up being almost 30 minutes late to her appointment. As soon as she did arrive, she asked me if I had anything to drink or anything to snack on because she was so hungry and parched. I went into my kitchen and grabbed her a bottle of water and some fruit, and when I came back, she was completely glued to her phone. Usually, I would advise my clients to keep their chins and nose pointed up towards the ceiling just to make it easier for me to get to their face. But no matter how many times I asked her to please lift her face, she was just completely glued to her phone. Even while I was doing her eyeshadow, she had her eyes open, and while I was working on her face makeup, she was eating the grapes and drinking the water like I wasn't even touching her face. I never want to be rude to my clients, and I always want them to have the most comfortable and fun experience as possible. I also try to avoid pretty much any confrontation, so I really didn't know what to do in this situation because half of the time I couldn't get to the part of her face that I needed to get to finish her makeup, and even if I could, her face was constantly moving from the chewing, texting, and drinking. Not only did I find this particularly difficult to work with, I also found it really rude. Because of all of the distractions, it ended up taking me about half an hour longer to complete her makeup. Keep in mind, she was also half an hour late, and it actually ended up pushing back all of my other appointments for the day. At the end of the day, she absolutely loved her makeup and she gave me a tip. But after that, I've refrained from offering my clients any snacks or drinks if I'm about to do their makeup, and I still thought it was kind of rude. What do you think?
Okay, so story time at the time I made all the boys in my grade cry, like all of them. Okay, so this was in 6th grade, and the way that the desks were set up in my classroom, it was like 2 seats facing like each other, so like 2 in front of each other. That was one table, right? Okay, so one day I was sitting by myself, like next to me there was no one, right? But in front of me there was this kid, right? So then this other kid comes and he's like, hey, can I sit next to you? And I was like, no, can't you see my friend sitting right there? But obviously there was no one, right? I was being fucking sarcastic. So the kid looked freaked out and they're both looking at each other like, what the fuck? Because I had a dead straight face because like, I don't know, like I just did. And this was like towards the end of the school year. So we had this big field trip coming up to the science camp in the mountains, like in the middle of fucking nowhere. This is when I still lived in LA. So fast forward, we're already on the bus and they keep teasing me like about like my ghost friend, but I kept going with it. I was like, no, I'm so fucking serious. Like, I see dead people. So once we get to the camp, all the boys go to a cabin, and then the girls get split up into 2 cabins, right? So once we're at the camp, we start doing a bunch of camp activities with all the people, right? And I meet this girl, and I get her to go along with it. Like, I tell her that I'm fucking with them, and she goes along with it. So then she starts telling them how she sees the person too, that I'm quote unquote seeing the ghost. So then those 2 boys start telling all the boys in the cabin how like this shit's real, like they're dead ass like seeing people, like this is freaky, like what the fuck. And I didn't realize how much they had told the other guys, like how much like they really like believed it, because to me it was still a joke. And it wasn't a big school, it was a charter school, so there was maybe only like 30 boys maybe. So this one night the camp leaders have us do this activity where we have to go in the middle of the woods, like pitch dark, and it's a group bonding activity, so we have to hold each other like by our shoulders and just walk in a straight line and basically go following the camp leader's voice. It was weird, but we did it. And the girl that was in on it, she was behind me holding my shoulders, right? So we start saying like, oh my god, like whispering like, oh my god, do you see those people too? Like, do you see this? Do you see that? Like literally freaking them out, and everybody was like listening. So then I didn't realize that everybody was like starting to for real get scared. So we get to a point in the activity where we have to walk, like it was maybe like 20 feet, like by ourselves. So like there was a line, and then like one person had to go at a time and then meet the other person like 20 feet away. And this was like in the middle of the woods, in the middle of the dark. Like I'm talking like you couldn't even see your hand in front of you. So it's my turn to walk, and I walk normal like the 20 feet until I feel like my friend, and then I stop, right? And then it's one of the boys' turn, and when he gets to us, he's dead ass crying, like bawling his eyes out, like, oh my god, I felt something grab my arm, I felt something grab my arm. Like they're all freaking out at this point. Literally, like I didn't realize that pretty much everyone was crying, like all the boys. But because there was so many people crying, the camp leaders had to turn on their flashlights, and we all had to walk back to the cabins, right? Camp leaders didn't know anything, so the boys ended up snitching on us. And then the camp leaders asked us if we were for real, and I was scared to get in trouble, so I said yes, like I'm so serious. So they ended up splitting me and the girl up, and that night they read us Bible verses. Yeah.
I stole my best friend's boyfriend for fun and made everyone hate her. So it was my freshman year of high school, and me and this girl, let's call her Brooke. She was the sweetest and kindest girl ever. Everyone liked her, and that made me jealous. She had the perfect boyfriend, perfect friends, perfect body, hair, eyes, skin, family, everything. I was so over it. So I met this one girl named Ivy. We talked about how much she thought she was all that, and I got the idea. Why not change her life around and I could take her place? So me and Ivy decided to get makeovers and work out for the perfect body. We dyed our hair to what suited us best and went shopping for the newest clothes. The next day at school, all attention was on us. Everyone wanted to be our friend, and we looked good. I walked up to Brooke and said hi, and she looked in shock and said hi. She said we both looked great and she was happy for us. I knew she was jealous. I then said hi to her boyfriend and touched his shoulder and said hi. He then said hi and I winked at him. Brooke didn't say anything though, she was too nice for that. So I invited the whole school to a last minute party, and that's when I got my plan. You will not believe what happens next. Come back for part 2. I invited them to a last minute party I was throwing, and they agreed to go. So this is when I made the plan. I decided to invite 2 boys to give her hell that they could do whatever to her since she rejected them in the past, and they agreed. It was around 8 p.m. when the party started. I had a 2-floor house, so the stairs kind of overlapped the first floor halfway, if that makes sense. Anyways, we continued having fun, and the boys texted me to place her directly under the stairwell, and I agreed. So I brought her there with Ivy, and we talked, and I thanked her for how much of a good friend she was. And if it weren't for her, I wouldn't look this good. She said thank you and basically took all of the credit. I texted Ivy the plan and told her to leave when I left, and she agreed. I told her I'll be right back and I'll get all of us drinks, and she said okay. I saw her and Ivy talking, and the Ivy said she'll be right back and to wait here, and she said okay. So she was just dancing by herself, and I turned around to get some punch, and then I heard screaming. Next thing you know, I turned around, she was covered in blood and some other stuff. I was shocked and confused. I texted the boys what it was, and it was pig blood and eggs. She then ran out crying. A couple of moments later, she sent me a text, and you will not believe what she said. Come back for part 3.
So she ended up sending me a couple of texts, and she was extremely mad. She said that was the worst party she ever went to, and I was the worst party hoster ever. I asked her how. She said that there were animals in there, and I have a lack of control of who goes into my parties or not. I told her sorry for what happened, and she said whatever. That's why literally nobody liked you, and you were a loser until you became actually pretty. I literally looked in shock at the text messages, and I didn't know how to respond. So then I came up with another idea. I was going to take screenshots of the messages, send them around school, so nobody would like her. I then started texting her boyfriend, and asked if he still wanted to date her after what happened. He said no. Over the course of 3 weeks, I ended up managing to take all of her friends, making everyone dislike her, and stole her boyfriend in the process. Would I say it's worth it? Probably not. But was it funny? Yes, it was. This is a prime example of why popularity doesn't matter in school. Literally anybody could take your place, and there's no sense of individuality. Follow for more story times, and follow my Instagram as well.
When I was a kid, my parents worked pretty much all the time, so they required me to have a babysitter. My babysitter was always the same girl. She was 16 or 17 at the time, and she was absolutely stunning. Keep in mind I was around 8 or 9 at the time. But there's one weekend that she came over that I'll never forget. So the night started off like usual. When she got there, she cooked me some dinner. Actually, it was grilled salmon. This girl could cook. And she was super lenient and cool, so after we got done eating, she let me watch an R-rated movie with her. But once it was time to put me to bed is where things got insane. She walked me up to my room and told me goodnight and that she loved me because we were pretty close at the time. Well, I tried going to sleep, but it wasn't working, so I started playing some video games. And after a while, I got bored and still wasn't tired, so I decided to go back downstairs to talk to the babysitter. But when I got downstairs, she was laying completely unclothed on my couch. Doing this? I was at a loss for words. She was so beautiful, and this is the first time I'd seen anything like that in real life, so I could not stop looking. But a few seconds later, she noticed that I was looking at her. Like and follow for part 2. So my babysitter walked me upstairs, told me goodnight, and she loved me. And after a while of laying in bed, I could not fall asleep, so I decided to play some video games. But of course, eventually I got bored, so I walked downstairs to talk to my babysitter. But when I got to the bottom of the stairs, I noticed that she was laying on the couch completely unclothed. Doing, this. And she was so bad that I could not help but sit and watch. That was until she noticed me looking at her. She immediately jumped up and screamed and put her clothes on. And I ran back to my room because I knew I was in trouble. And a few moments later, my bedroom door burst open and she started screaming at me. And then she literally bent me over and spanked me. But after she calmed down, she told me that I could not tell my parents about this because she really didn't want to lose her job. If I didn't tell them and forgot about it, then me and her would be cool. And I really liked her, so I didn't end up telling my parents. And I'm still in contact with her today. How does she know? Haven't cracked yet. But we'll see. I hope you guys enjoyed that fan-submitted story. Like and follow for more.